Parking of Morgantown presentation by Danielle Matthews and Elizabeth Parr.
Recording.
So where did we leave off last time? Well, I think it was at Phase 1. Here in Phase 1, we generated a problem web stemming from transportation to parking to WVU to roads to modes, and we sub-branched off of every single one of those topics and kept branching and going deeper down the rabbit hole until eventually, when it came time for presentation, we had no idea what our problem was. So where did we go wrong in Phase 1? For starters, where was the wicked problem? Basically, what we presented with our problem map wasn't a problem. We presented something to be studied. We presented a research topic almost. There was too much research and not enough focus on what was wrong. And we got a little too emotionally invested. We kept going further down that rabbit hole and, well, limited our gaze onto nothing. So what did we decide to do? We had to backtrack and go back to Phase 1, observe and research. First, what was the problem that we were trying to solve with this? Well, we wanted to solve Morgantown parking and transportation. Well, great, we have a problem. Can we limit it? Morgantown parking or transportation? Okay, great, we can limit it. But how? More research. Let's identify the problem with the most solutions. And what were our findings? Transportation of WVU has more outlets for solutions. But the real question is, should we be limiting it? So, from our mind map that we decided to go through after Phase 1, this is the transportation around campus. From that, we went into parking garages, more parking options, more on that parking subject, and then we looked at the dorms and possibly limiting their access of cars to certain classes of students, my ride, and bike rentals. But even in the back of our minds when we were thinking about all this, we were still looking at all these beautiful empty spaces and going, parking, parking, parking. Alright, so we had parking and we had transportation. But we had to look at each of these problems individually to find out what our possible solution track could possibly be. For parking, we can look at the amount of spaces. Yeah, they're limited, but is there really any area to expand on that? The prices of temp and long-term parking differ between lot to lot, even on downtown versus the Evansville campus. And then we had to look at the differences between lots and garages. But that's not a very long list. For transportation, on the other hand, we could look at the bus system, the PRT system, the car system, and walking. All of these areas need improvement. Nothing's reliable. So, what did we do? We sat down together and we just did what we did back in the day when we first started Design 220. We sat down and we made a list of every possible solution that came to our minds. It totaled to 19 total. And it ranged from the totally bizarre to totally redesigning the entire city to the most common thing of building a parking lot. So, yeah, that's great, but we had to limit our ideas down from that. And of course we have to do something we can do. What can we do? Looking at all these, we put a little star next to the ones we can do, and we expand from there. Alright, so we got into our possible solution number 1, the parking garage. Our initial idea when we had just our Phase 1 material was to build more parking lots. Parking lots, woo! That provides, more parking spaces for everybody. And it increases the revenue for WVU, beneficial to them, right? And it allows more students to bring cars. That's great. Great for everybody. Well, isn't this being done right now? Wouldn't it make sense? Well, we didn't look into that at first, but here's a map of the WVU's parking plan for this year. See that little red circle? That's where they plan to put a parking lot on the downtown campus, Evansville campus, and the Health and Sciences campus. Okay, so it is a pretty, general idea. So now, all parts of the campus are getting these new prospective parking lots. Nothing's really short term though. They all look like they're parking pass lots, right? Okay, so let's look at other parking options. The biggest parking spot I know of on campus, at least, is the mountain lair. But that's not a regular parking lot. That's a parking garage. So how about building another one? You have levels, so it's not just flat. You have more parking options, right? So where would it be? When? How much? That's what we have to think about. So we developed our possible solution number one, parking garage, at the intersection of University Avenue and Falling Run Road. We decided to go with a general 3-story parking garage, just like the mountain lair, in a location that's where a lot of the students are driving back and forth between different campuses. Downtown campus being our biggest spot for students, that's where we decided to put it. But how much is this going to cost again? Well, it's an approximate cost of about $10 million, which even divided amongst the 29,175 total students here at WVU this year, that's a cost of $342.76 additional per student. That's not really reasonable, is it? Which leads us to our next solution. Possible solution number 2, being the freshman and sophomore restriction. So possible solution number 2, WVU restricting freshmen and sophomore students from actually bringing their cars to the WVU main campus. Other universities such as Marshall and Fairmont have tried this system and it's worked. They have a lot of dorms to place their freshmen and sophomore students, just like we do, and we even have apartment shuttles that will take them from our WVU main campus up to the apartments that might be a little bit far for walking. And mind you, this is a free system. For WVU, you're not going to have to pay for expansions of parking lots, parking garages, or anything like that. You can probably keep the amount you have now. It's free for students. You don't have to pay for gas. You don't have a car. You don't have to pay for a parking pass. You don't have a car. And it's free for everyone. You already have the dorms up in place. Why not put some more freshmen in there? Some more sophomores? What's the big deal? That's great, but hold on. What if the student needs the car and they're a freshman or a sophomore? Maybe they have a medical reason for needing a car, or maybe a job that's too far for them to walk to. Or what if they just need occasionally to get off campus? A lot more than not. Some possible ideas that we came up with while pondering the solution were, there are current shuttles. There are buses, the PRT, there are taxi services in Morgantown, right? Students can use that. And, of course, for every rule there are exceptions. We thought that maybe the university would be nice enough to make some exceptions for these students, especially for the medical and the job needs. And this led us to possible solution number 3.
This led us to possible solution number 3, the MyRide system. Possible solution number 3. So while I was in New York City, I was actually meeting with somebody who was a former WVU student named Brandon Lee. And he's actually an entrepreneur, and he started a couple of businesses here in Morgantown recently. One of his ventures that he's going off into is the MyRide system. MyRide is a free downloadable app for all Apple and Android devices that works with the GPS satellites as a taxi and a delivery service. It's a free app for anyone, and they can use it to get from point A to point B. All you've got to do is log onto your MyRide app and look up the drivers who are around in the area. And people who are driving can look up people who need to get from point A to point B and whatever other job is available. It provides jobs for juniors and seniors with cars if we use this app. Juniors and seniors who have their vehicles can work for the MyRide app and use it to get around and to pick up freshmen and sophomores who need to get around. It implements a completely new way of transportation for the Morgantown area. As she said earlier, there are taxi services, but there's only one taxi service available here, and it's less than reliable. It's hard to get a hold of, they're always on hold. It's just a really tough situation to deal with. The MyRide app simplifies everything, and it's already on the Apple Store if you want to, or on your App Store. If you want to go ahead and look it up and download it. He says he's shooting for fall 2015 to get MyRide here in Morgantown. We also thought of a more healthier way to bring another alternate way of transportation into Morgantown. Our possible solution number 4 was maybe bringing in more bike rentals. It's healthy, it's affordable, it's just an eco-friendly alternative way to get around. It just depends on the weather, the road conditions, and availability of bicycles. Here are a couple of maps that show all of the locations where there are bike racks where you can park your bike and lock them up. All of these little green dots are bike rack locations. This is the downtown campus, and as you can see, there's a ton of places for you to be able to put your bikes. This is the Evansdale campus, and once again, pretty much in every engineering building, there's a place where you can park your bikes. And then on the health and sciences campuses, there is the whole hospital here, and you can park your bike at 2 locations. So, here's what our plan is. We wanted to create 2 bike rental locations per downtown and Evansdale campus. For the downtown campus, we thought the Mountain Layer and the Walnut Pear Tea Station. The Mountain Layer is the main hubbub, the main center for students to go to. It just makes sense that if we were going to have a place for kids to rent bikes, it would be the one student layer, student union. And then we also thought the Walnut Station because it's close to High Street. It's an easy way for students and even residents of Morgantown to be able to use the rentals. On the Evansdale campus, we thought the rec, which after doing a little bit of research, we found you can already rent bikes from the rec, and it's super easy. And then we thought, why don't you have another location, maybe at Towers, because it's easier for freshmen, and it's like the 4 dorms there that are most used. So we thought, okay, we can update and increase the bike locations around the entire campus, and we can promote this through the wellness program and the WVU cycling team. There's a lot of outlets that we could use for promotion, and it's just a healthy alternative. So now we had to take time to decide on what plan we're actually going to do. We didn't know where to go from here. We decided we had to think about the plans that we liked best. Options 2, 3, and 4 just seemed like the most doable. Adding the parking garages, the cost of that is just out of the question. We can't afford it. It's not fair to ask students to pay another $350 on top of tuition, especially if that student doesn't even have a car. So we thought, what's the most helpful for people? Option 2 and 3 are the most helpful. To limit the amount of cars on campus by adding freshman and sophomore dorm requirements, and also to implement the My Ride app. It just seemed like it's something that's already going to happen, and it's doable and helpful. Option 4 with the bicycles, it's really hard, and we live on a mountain. Not most people want to ride their bicycles uphill, and dealing with the weather in Morgantown is tough enough as it is. It's be hard to imagine how am I going to get to class on a bike if there's a snowstorm and then it's spring the next day. It's just difficult. So out of the 2, we couldn't decide on which one that we liked best. We thought, why don't we just create a proposal that implements and uses both of them? We limit the cars, so we say, okay, sorry guys, you're a freshman, you're a sophomore, we're not going to let you guys have your car on campus, but hey, we've got this totally new app with the My Ride system coming in, so don't worry. You're going to have a way to get around campus. Our final solution and our proposal is a combination of both solution 2 and 3 with more research and formality. The creation of the WVU Transportation Simplification Act, or the TSA. It addresses that there are still issues with the current outline because there already is a Transportation Act in Morgantown. But we recognize all of the complications, and it goes into further research of ways that we can solve that and do ways of improvement. So what does this mean? Well, it's a 2-part system. The outline proposal is divided into 2 clauses. The first clause is WVU wants to restrict and limit access to cars and open up the WVU freshman and sophomore status. So you have to be a freshman and sophomore living in dorms for 2 years. And then implementing entrepreneur Brandon Lee's My Ride system in the Morgantown area. What we are asking for is the cooperation of WVU to restrict car access for freshman and sophomore students so that the pressure of parking and traffic is reduced throughout Morgantown. And thus, we want to allow the My Ride system to come into the Morgantown area, providing jobs for junior and senior students who already have their cars, and transportation for the freshman and sophomore students who will not have their vehicles. Do designers end at a prototype? No, we do not, and we all know that. After drafting up our final solution and submitting it for Phase 2, we continued into the evaluation stage by interviewing 44 WVU students outside of Arnold Hall and Mountain Layer. Our findings, we wanted to keep the survey simple and short. We only asked 4 questions, yes or no questions, too, so that way we could keep track of everybody's answers easily and we didn't have to bug anybody about time. 14% of students stated that they have lived or they would live in dorms as a sophomore. That number isn't very large, but we also got 30% of students who stated that they had a car in Morgantown their freshman year. So we can only assume that if they were required to live in the dorm freshman and sophomore year, a small amount of them would still bring their car, 30% out of the entire freshman body. 94% of students agreed that they would use an app similar to Uber that also acts as a free delivery service. Everybody compared MyRide to Uber, but the difference between MyRide and Uber is he's also delivering anything you want, food, groceries, anything you can imagine, while picking you up and taking you to your location. 64% of students agreed that they would use bikes as a mode of transportation around campus if they were easier to rent. Everybody who said that they wouldn't had the complication or the problem with weather and with the hills in Morgantown. So is this the end? No. There's so many possibilities that we can do. We can just keep on changing, implementing. There are new things happening in Morgantown every day and new ways of transportation. This isn't the end, but I think that we've made serious headway in finding solutions to the transportation problem here.